Do you see him as someone being under a deadline? Because very often when you listen to him, there's obviously a lot of rhetoric and it resonates, people respond to that very positively, but the critics say that he's the sole variable here, that the changes that you just mentioned are not systematic or systematic enough.
I would say this is certainly something we're looking at. So far, he has been the driver of the change, absolutely. And the extent to which people can, first of all, keep up with him is one question. And then the extent to which his vision is really shared and that he has enough support for what he's trying to do. I think these are questions that a lot of people have. He is the person who wants to race forward. With respect to the idea of a deadline, I think that's a question for him. But
he's definitely under a lot of pressure.
He's under a lot of pressure, and I think there's a sense that there's a window of opportunity. Well, windows open and windows close. So how long that window is going to be open, how long the patience of the population will be there behind him, I don't know. But I think that in him, one senses that he has set for himself a deadline. Exactly what that deadline is, I'm not sure. Some people have said, 2 or 3 years, but let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. I'm not aware of any specific deadline, but I agree with you. There's an enormous sense of pressure, and I think that some of that is the pressure that the president has put on himself.
Yeah, he's definitely, every time he talks, he's raising the expectations, and it's going to be very, difficult to manage those expectations.
That's right. That's right.
It's obvious. What is the Uzbek government asking from the United States at this point? Are they asking for some specific assistance in terms of supporting the reforms? We hear investment a lot when it comes to the United States.
I think there are many things that are specific, but I think in general what the government of Uzbekistan would like, certainly at the level of the president, is recognition. Recognition that the Uzbekistan that President Mirziyoyev is leading is not the Uzbekistan of old. And that
Does he want you to see him as a reformer?
Oh, I think absolutely. I think he would like for not only me, I think he would like to have all Americans in the policy space see him as a reformer. Certainly in all the speeches. I wasn't there for his 4-hour tour de force speech at the end of the year, but I was there for the Constitution Day speech, which he talked a lot about a subject like torture, something that would not have been discussed by the president before. And so that is a reform. And the idea that there was a blacklist and now people are off it, that is a reform. So I think, yes, absolutely, he would like to be seen as a reformer, and he would like to see those reforms recognized, because I think for a long time he knows that Uzbekistan was often compared unfavorably to many states in the region, and it was seen as certainly not a state that was moving forward in the area of how citizens related to the government. I think this is something he very much wants to change, and yes, he wants us to see him as a reformer. I do think that in the area of what kind of economic relationship President Mirziyoyev would like, certainly, as before, the government of Uzbekistan wants the United States to be very active as an investor, particularly, but also in trade. I think there we have always said that the idea is, what are the conditions that Uzbekistan is offering? It's Uzbekistan that must attract the businesses. It's not that the United States needs to go there necessarily. And so I think this is a debate. This is a debate, and there's some work that Uzbekistan has to do in order to be more attractive to our foreign direct investors. But as we saw from the AUCC meeting, the American Uzbek Chamber of Commerce meeting in New York in September, there's tremendous interest. So the question is, how do we turn that interest into something concrete? And there, I think a lot depends on Uzbekistan. There's a lot that still needs to be done on the issue of currency. There's a lot that still needs to be done on the rule of law. I think there's a lot of concern about the bandwidth of the country. Do they have the workers there who could really provide that human resource that investors need? But absolutely, I think one of the things that President Mirziyoyev wants is more foreign direct investment, a stronger economic relationship. I also think he wants to be seen as a provider of security for the region, and therefore we have been very appreciative of Uzbekistan's long-term support of what we have tried to do in Afghanistan. There's now a new strategy, and the president has suggested that he's willing to be supportive of that. I think that's very much welcome. So again, I think he wants to be seen as a friend of the international community, where there is mutual interest for the United States and Uzbekistan to cooperate more closely. Absolutely, he wants that, and of course that's what we want too. The key is to find those areas where the mutual cooperation makes the most sense for both countries.